Welcome to Schoolin' Around, a podcast hosted by Branching Minds featuring prominent leaders, subject matter experts, and thought innovators with their perspectives on the current challenges facing K-12 education. I'm your host, Larissa Napolitan, a former teacher, instructional coach, and a member of the Branching Minds team. My hope is to shine a light on phenomenal educators and those that are on a mission to transform our schools and the lives of students. Change doesn't happen without intentional effort and long-term commitment. It also requires building momentum, ensuring that those efforts grow stronger and can't be easily set aside. With that in mind, we are thrilled to highlight the inspiring work happening at Samuel Walker Houston Elementary in Huntsville ISD in Texas. This spring, we're celebrating the schools and educators who are not just implementing PBIS and MTSS, but are truly shaping how these frameworks support students and create lasting systems of success. Samuel Walker Houston Elementary stands out as a leader in this effort as one of our winners of our MTSS Momentum Awards. And we're excited to share their story. And today we are joined by Anthony Williams, the assistant principal of Samuel Walker Houston Elementary, to share about their work. Welcome to the podcast, Anthony.
Thank you, Miss Larissa. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm going to have you first kind of share a little bit about yourself and then tell us about Huntsville and your school.
Okay. Well, I've been in education now. This is my 21st year. I started off working with sixth grade students, teaching math and science, and then moved into an instructional coach position. Then I had the opportunity to take a job as an assistant principal at a middle school with some colleagues. And I moved from Huntsville to a different district and spent about 9 years down there as an assistant principal in both the middle school setting and the elementary setting. I really fell in love with the elementary kiddos. I found out that that was kind of the niche that, I was meant to be a part of. Then I had the opportunity to come back to Huntsville in the capacity of the assistant principal at Samuel Walker Houston Elementary and continue the work with my principal that I had been working with. Now we have worked together for the past 10 years. So me and him have really refined some of the things that we do, the processes and systems that we put in place for our campuses that we worked at. And we just continue to, use student data to make decisions that make the biggest impact for our kiddos.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit about your school. What makes your school a unique place to be?
Well, Samuel Walker Houston Elementary, we are a pre-K through fifth grade campus. We have 662 students on our campus currently. Our vision is to be the school of choice in Huntsville ISD, and it's not to compete with anybody else. It's just that we want to offer a product that our consumers really want to come and be a part of. And we work each and every day very diligently to make sure that we're doing that.
Well, the thing that stuck out to me as I was reading your application for our award, you were in the category of MTSS and PBIS. Something I've been asking a lot of the schools that I've been interviewing is, what are the things that motivated you to set specific goals around PBIS specifically and how that blends into MTSS? What was there certain factors that played into that?
Well, when Mr. Burns and myself began this journey back in 2023, came into the campus not knowing a whole lot about it. It's, here in my backyard in Huntsville. I live in Huntsville, but I didn't know a whole lot about it. I didn't really have a whole lot of people that I knew that had worked at the campus. But we started looking and trying to pinpoint the areas that we could improve upon. One of the main areas that needed some very, very specific work was classroom management, student behavior, setting campus expectations, and making sure that we see those through. The main thing that we have worked on doing is building the capacity in our teachers to make it happen. I mean, it doesn't happen because Mr. Burns and myself walked through the door. It's taken a lot of work, and we have a unique campus. What really sets our campus aside from campuses that I've worked with before, Huntsville is a town that our large base of employment's our prison system. And we have a bigger population of students that are African American, but they actually came from Africa. So we work with that. We have a language, obviously you're emergent bilinguals and they're considered bilingual because English is not necessarily their native language, but learning how to work with those students and those families. And that's what makes it unique. We have obviously every school is a melting pot of different groups of folks, but that makes us unique as well in the setting that we have. But, just looking at what we needed to do when we hit the ground in August of 2023 and working with teachers and build a capacity in them to, do the work that we're currently seeing the fruition from.
Yeah. I like that you said it as building capacity for the teachers, because I do think when it comes to classroom management, we all come into the profession with different levels of comfortability in that, right? Like different levels of knowledge and understanding. And I know over the years you get better at it. It's a muscle that you start to build. And so building that capacity, building that muscle for teachers is really key, because you're right. The principal and the assistant principal can't be the sole disciplinarians of the school or the ones that set the tone, and really that structure of a classroom plays a lot into what students expect of the day and what they know, what behavior is acceptable and those kind of things. And so I think that that's such a important thing to recognize for leaders, of just supporting teachers is also helping them build the capacity to do some of that groundwork together.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you talked about in your application or your nomination for the award was the 3 big rocks of PBIS as guiding principles to align your staff and students. Can you explain what you mean by big rocks and why they're critical for your PBIS framework, and then how maybe they're influencing your approach for student behavior?
I can definitely do that. So we started off this year, obviously reflecting on what we have done in the past and what worked and what we needed to refine, what systems that we needed to look at. So anyway, the first thing that we do, our campus, our district, we're a CKH district, capturing kids' hearts. So we have really been working over the course of the last 5 years district wide in order to train staff and get them to understand the premise, I guess, behind capturing kids' hearts and why we do the things that we do. So the first thing that we ask our teachers to do is to work with their kids, build a social contract. How are we going to treat one another in the classroom? What are our expectations of one another, both the teacher and the students? So the first thing is to get them to understand that you have to collaborate with your students in order to create the expectations that you set in your classroom. I like to move toward using the term expectations rather than rules, because rules means that, we have to comply and there's a compliance. But with expectations, you expect something of me as a teacher. I expect something of you as a student. And I've got something that I can refer back to. And we ask our teachers to do that and establish that with their students. And then also talk through the rewards that we're going to get if we meet our expectations, or perhaps the consequences if we have to move into an area where we have to do some redirect. That was our first big rock. The second one is that the first 20 days of instruction, it's very important to lay the foundation for what you expect for the remainder of the school year. So we ask our teachers to teach those expectations, reteach the expectations. We also provided them with a classroom behavior matrix, because the 3 things that we hold at the top of our list of expectations around our campus wide is to be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. Those things, they sound simple, but we have to teach students how to do that. So anyway, we ask teachers to do that. But before we ask them to do it, during our back to school training, we had whole training sessions, and teachers are required to rotate to different ones. One of them was PBIS and the Behavior Coalition put it on. And we took our grade level teachers and we walked them around with a different matrix. So we had a blank hallway expectations matrix, because some of our hallways we've turned into sensory hallways, but you have to teach the students how you want those hallways used. and how to use them. What does it look like when we're being safe, being responsible, being respectful in these areas? We don't necessarily have to use these areas to get to where we need to be in the building, but it's something that allows the kids that movement. So we expected our teachers to do that. We monitored that. And then, coaching our students in their positive the expectations of treating each other in a positive way. And then reinforcing the success that they had. We use a campus-wide system where we provide what we call Buzzy Bucks. And students can earn those. And then we use those in a drawing on Fridays. Matter of fact, that's coming up in about an hour in my cafeteria.
And what are the prizes? I'm going to follow up and ask later about what are the prizes for the Buzzy Bucks, because I love that you have a currency. I've been in several schools where we had claw cash or whatever it is. I think that sometimes it's such a great way to reinforce rules, and I love that we have to have insight into students of like what's going to draw them, what's going to be a motivation for them, and so I love
exactly. And then the last thing that we asked teachers to do, our last big rock was to speak with purpose when you're talking to students. Remember that we are talking to another human being, and we want to make sure that we treat them with respect. But we ask them to teach the kids and not just tell them. You don't talk at a kid, you talk to a kid. And the main thing is that I've found in the 21 years that I've been in this profession is building those real strong relationships, not just with the student, but with the student, their family, supporting everybody, providing a wraparound service, if you will, that, and reassuring the parents that, hey, we're here for you. We're here for your kid. But the main thing is that we support your student because they're the reason why we come to work every day.
Yeah. I love
and we got to do it in a positive manner,
For sure. And I love that you talked about speaking with purpose, because I think that's a skill. I think sometimes that it's good to practice, because I think there's a lot of times as a teacher, I found this. I worked with middle schoolers, and I had to learn over time to use less words. They didn't need me to lecture them. They didn't mean it. If I continue to talk, I'm still kind of escalating the situation, and to speak with purpose, to kind of instruct in everything that I'm doing can help a student feel, even in a sort of a hard situation where they're not meeting a behavior expectation, it's important to let them know that we want them to learn the replacement behavior that we want them to have. And help them feel supported even in that misbehavior or not meeting an expectation.
And it is very, very critical that we go back and teach our students those behavior expectations. And that's what I try to communicate to my teachers. If they came front loaded with it, we wouldn't have to do all this work.
Yeah.
This would be the easiest job on earth. Unfortunately, from what I found, this is one of the most difficult jobs that I've ever had, because you're working with human beings.
Yeah.
And so we've got to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to do that. A person that's played a pivotal role in teaching me this is my wife. She, through raising our two boys, her focus in college was early childhood. So she taught me. I've got a wealth of knowledge on early childhood just from our interactions, and her teaching me how to interact with our sons, especially during those times when things were difficult. Dad wants to come in and be dad, but you have to make sure that you are doing it. I don't want them to raise their family in a way that's not pleasing to us or anything. And you have to communicate. And she's taught me that. So.
Well, and I think there's so much of that plays into those interactions that you have with students. You can damage a relationship really quickly in how you speak to them. It takes a lot to build that trust and that foundation. And you talked about those strong relationships. So I think that speaking in a positive tone with purpose in support of them is so key. So I love that that's a big rock, because I think that makes a big difference for many educators. And I think going back to that idea of building capacity, because I think as adults often there's some work we have to do to be able to do that with students too. And so, and I don't want to ignore that there oftentimes there's factors in an adult's life that impact how you work. We all have our good days and bad days. And so, but building that capacity is so important.
Yes, ma'am. I completely agree.
Well, I want to kind of switch gears and talk a little bit about, you have a badge system, like a badge challenge. And
yes,
I know
ma'am.
that like badging, we haven't really talked about it a lot on our podcast, but it's an interesting concept in education. And so it's a creative way that you're using to engage students and build that positive school culture like we've talked about. So for those that aren't familiar, could you describe a little bit how the system works and maybe what inspired you to tie these
I
behavior
can definitely do that. It was spring of 2024. We were trying to figure out, and I'm sorry, let's back that up. It was actually the fall of 2024, where 2023, 2024, my first year here, I'm surprised I survived it. I'm not going to lie. But in the fall of 2024, we took a step back and we realized there's some things that we need to do. We had the Buzzy Bucks going, but it really wasn't, taking off like we wanted it. We weren't getting the return on that investment. So I sat down with our PBIS committee. We call ours the Behavior Coalition. But anyway, sat down with a group of adults and I said, we've got to do something different. I don't know what it is, but we're going to have to do something different. We've got to figure out something that we can do that will have a bigger impact than just Buzzy Bucks. So anyway, I've used an online system before where students had to wear a name badge or had to have a badge, and you could scan that with your device and they could earn points and things like that. But you can't see that, there's no way to project that in the cafeteria and it be a visual every day for kids to see how they're doing as a collective when you're working towards a goal. So we decided that we were going to find a way to celebrate them. And then we started looking at, if we celebrated them as a grade level, could we get more buy-in and have a bigger impact? Because when they travel in our common areas, they travel as a collective. They travel by classrooms, always have a teacher support them, not like middle school. Middle school, when the door opens, it's a free-for-all. You already know that. So anyway, but they travel in a collective. So we wanted to find something that we could do to celebrate them. And so we also wanted to find out what areas our staff thought we needed to focus on. So then we started using surveys to get feedback from our staff. What do you see as a problem? What are the problem areas? What do we need to focus on? Once we collected that data, we sat down as a behavior coalition. We looked at it. We disaggregated it, identified at the time 4 areas that we really wanted to focus on. And then we sit and brainstorm, how can we celebrate kids? What can we do that it's going to be a visual they can see every day? So in our cafeteria, we have a gigantic wall that has nothing on it. It's just a wall. But it has enough space to display 7 grade levels of information. So challenged the coalition. I said, here, we're going to set the cafeteria up. It's going to be a gigantic pictograph. And we are going to, because I started thinking about how can we incorporate some of the things that we're doing in math class. I was a math teacher. So, what can we do to have them visually see it if we can't do it digitally and display it? So we came up with badges, but the badges that I chose, I went to my receptionist, who is a very creative young lady. And I said, hey, we identified the areas we wanted to focus on. Let's come up with some badges that the kids would like to see and like to earn. And then we did that. We made it fun. We started advertising it to our kids, morning announcements, having our teachers in the classrooms deliver the message. Not only we have Buzzy Bucks, now we've got our behavior badges. So, and we explained to the students how they were going to earn the badges, what the badges were going to reinforce. We rolled it out to the faculty in our staff meeting, let them punch holes in it and tell us, all the things that we needed to fix before we got it going. And then we tried it and we rolled it out. And the response that we saw was pretty amazing. We found out, and we working with a lady that is very pivotal in how we have developed our MTSS program here in the district. Working with her, we were able to display or figure out a way to display it. And then she came in after we got the ball rolling, and she started doing some fidelity checks to ask students, what do you want? How do you like the program? Do you think this is an impact, that if it's having a big impact on our campus? And what she found out, that the kids would rather work for something that their entire grade level could enjoy rather than working for something individually all the time. We had the Buzzy Buck system. That's an individual reward or reinforcer, but they really, really like the badge system. And then, with that, there was a reward, if you will. There was a reinforcer at the end. And once we did the first one, our kindergarten class won the first one, and they got a snow party. And once the other kids saw that, they were like, okay, I want a snow party. I want to, whatever they're going to do. So, it kind of encouraged them to work for it. We learned that we had to change the system up. So we did it for 2 months, and then we looked to see what it changed. Did it have an impact? And the badges allowed the students to see which grade levels were in the lead. We made the announcement. We talked it up every morning on announcements, and I gave them feedback on who was earning the most and really kept it in the forefront of their mind. And since then, it's just something that we continue to use. I've learned a lot along the way, obviously, but and it's very basic. It's not anything that's really big and fancy and everything, but it allows the students to see it. It allows the community to see it. Parents that come in and enjoy lunch with their students. So there's just a lot of things that we've really taken away from it.
I think something you're highlighting is the idea that the collective joy or the sense of belonging that students crave also is kind of plays into this, of celebrating together that we won something, that it's a group effort, and how much that influences the students' experience in school, and how you can fight for things individually, but if we're doing it together, it's easier, or it's, you have your buddy there to remind you, remember the bad, things like that. I think we kind of forget that experience of the student is so influenced also by the students around them and the environment that they're in, or the collective experience. And so I think that's really interesting that they liked the rewards being as a group rather than
right.
just
One of the comments one of our kindergarten students made when Ms. Torres was going around and doing the fidelity checks, one of the kindergarten students said that the badges help me give friends a good life and a good day. And, and then the first celebration with the kindergarten kids, I don't know how, I can't count it on both of my hands, how many students said that this is the best day ever. And if you can create, they got to come in and be in school for 8 hours a day. We expect them to do a lot of things. We've got very high expectations at Samuel Walker Houston Elementary of our staff and our students, but for kids to come in and be celebrated, and for them to see that as, this is the reason why I come to school. I come to school, I'm getting an education, but when I'm celebrated, it's the best day ever. And that keeps them engaged and wanting to earn that as a grade level. But there were numerous kids that day that said that. And, when I shared that with Ms. Torres, she was like, I wish I would have been here to see it. It's one of those things where, you can't buy those experiences for kids sometimes, but if you can provide it and you can reinforce it in a positive way, they want to come to school. They want to be a part of what you've created. And that's what we're doing, you know.
Well, so I am curious about sort of the impact that some of this work that you've had. I know that one of your goals was you set a goal to have a reduction in office discipline referrals. You do a lot of like work around looking at discipline data. Can you share some kind of insight into this, like how maybe first start talking about how the work of even just looking at the data together with your staff has impacted things?
Yes, ma'am, I can. Well, and that is what we did. So we started compiling the data from when we started the journey until now, and we found out that the things that we're doing have impacted our both our staff and our students so much that it has really reduced the amount of office discipline referrals that we deal with throughout the day. We've narrowed our focus down to a small percentage of kids, and we are working on intervening with those students in order to make progress. But setting that goal, the first thing that we do is we look at the data. We sit down and we disaggregate that, figure out where we having our problems. We do that on monthly. We look for trends. When we started this journey, the trend is everything was going up. Our ISS placements, our OSS placements, everything was headed straight up. And obviously, if a kid's not in the classroom, they're getting a substitute education at best, right? So I need to keep them in the classroom. What can we do to bring those trends down? We started putting the badge system in place, reinforcing the things that we want to see, surveying our students, surveying our teachers. And we were able to see the trend start to decline. The number of ISS and OSS last year really started to decrease because of some of the systems that we were putting in place. We take the data back every month, share it at the Behavior Coalition meeting, discuss the trends, look at the highest number that, obviously we're looking at the data and we're trying to figure out, okay, if we have an increase here, what do we need to do? How can we make an impact and change that and bring that down? And you have to present the data to the teachers in a timely manner, and it has to be relevant to what they're doing,
Yeah.
So anyway, we've done that. And we've also, like I said, we just completed our middle of the year survey, both feedback from staff and feedback from students. And next week, we take that data to our Behavior Coalition. We're going to look at what the feedback is giving us, and we're going to make some decisions moving forward into our next challenge, which will start February and March. But you have to do something, and the data is very important. Every decision that we make at Samuel Walker Houston Elementary, whether it's academic or behavior, is based on student data. And we've used Branching Minds, the Branching Minds program. My wife has really worked hard our MTSS coordinator has really worked hard to implement that system, and we have started putting all of our data in there so that everything's in one place, so that we can look at academics, behavior, and make some data-driven decisions for individual students and for the campus. But we have this year, I don't know how we could decrease office discipline referrals anymore, but we're definitely going to work on it.
I am curious, doing a lot of that work to sort of maybe even just set behavior expectations and decrease the amount of students in ISS or OSS. Do you feel like that's freed up space for your staff to really focus on those students who need them the most?
Yes, it's definitely our ISS, our instructional assistant that mans that, works closely with another gentleman that is our behavior, not specialist, but they work with our kids that are in a program that we call our SLL program, our social learning lab. And this is a group of 8 kids. We've identified 8 students that need specific reinforcers. We have set times that we go and do check-ins to see. We collect that data. That data is uploaded into Branching Minds so that it is there for us to see, look for trends and things like that for individual students. But it's when we keep kids in the classroom and we're able to address those behavior issues on an individual basis, and then we're doing purposeful check-ins with the students that we know struggle, and we have those set. We have a particular student that's on every 15 minutes throughout the day. we're going to make sure that we're on point, we're taking care of business, or, we may need to come out, redirect, look at our goal that we set for the day, and then go back in and see if we can do it. But we are very strategic in how we design our programs to make the biggest impact for the students that we know need the most support.
Yeah.
And when I don't know what to do, I bring in everybody from the outside to help me.
Yeah.
I have an awesome behavior coach that works with my campus, and she always has some great ideas, and I learn from her. But that's what we work to do
Yeah.
is just to make sure that we support the kids that really, really need it.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I asked that, because I think that sometimes I've been in schools where like there's a lot of behaviors that probably can be deterred if everyone has the same expectation, or they understand the expectations, that we've been trained on them. You kind of get that tier 1 behavior stuff under control, and then you have more freedom to like focus on those students that need more attention,
Yeah.
because you've sort of brought down the tier 1 need.
And we have another thing that our teachers have at their disposal when they're doing a reteach, if it's for expectations across our campus, we have some signs that I've developed in the past, but we brought this concept to use that just has the 3 simple expectations for that common area, whether it's the hallway, the playground, and they have that to use as a reinforcer as well. But the students have that as a reminder. When I'm traveling in the hallway, this is how I should travel. When I'm at the restroom, this is what that should look like. And we work on that because students need to know what the expectations are. And it makes it a whole lot easier for our staff if everybody, like you said, was on the same page.
Yeah. Well, I think your progress with PBIS and MTSS can inspire many educators who are maybe beginning on the journey, or they're trying to like restart their journey. What would you say are really important steps for schools to prioritize when they're starting out?
I would say the first thing is whatever you start, don't give up on it if it doesn't work the first time. I have done complete resets for PBIS. You can't give up. The next thing is we use feedback. We use data to support what we're doing, but we get input from our staff and we get input from our consumers, which are our students. What do they think? What do they feel? What do they want it to look like? And then for the teachers, what do you see as a focus area that we need to do? So getting feedback from everybody and using that feedback to direct what you want to see, Let's see. The main thing is systems. Mr. Burns and I, along with Ms. Pancook, the other assistant principal, are big on systems. If you have systems in place for the things that you want to do, and you have the support of everybody, then, the only thing you really have to do is see if your system works and go back and refine it if it doesn't. Make those tweaks that would make it happen. But the main thing is don't give up on it. See it through. It's not going to happen fast. It's going to be something that's going to take 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years is reasonable when it comes to resetting and teaching a campus full of students and staff, what this should look like.
Yeah.
And if one of the things that I like to ask teachers when we're having, because we do teacher observations, what is the correlation between student behavior and student success in the classroom? And if you don't have management, if you don't have a way to manage your classroom, it's going to make that educational process a struggle. But if you have systems in place and you use them with fidelity, you refine them when they need to be refined, and you take the feedback that you get from your kids and you make those adjustments, then you can be successful. But it takes time. It really takes time.
Yeah. Well, and they say, MTSS, we often say, like, isn't really fully implemented for 3 to 5 years, really. And, I think in education, we always want that like silver bullet, the thing that's going to fix things really quickly, but it doesn't. It just takes that hard work and the commitment to see things through, like you're talking about. And so I know the job of assistant principal isn't the easiest. And so we thank you for the hard work that you're doing for your students and for your community as well. And so this was just such a great conversation. I loved hearing about the work that you're doing and how exciting it is for your students to get to participate in fun things too, and also for just the work that you're doing with your staff. So we thank you and we congratulate you guys on your award, and we look forward to hearing more about the awesome things that happen at Samuel Walker Houston Elementary. I also want to say that is a mouthful to say often.
It is, and that's one of the things, don't get to speak on it very much, but the gentleman that the school is named after, once I started doing my research, because in Huntsville, Sam Houston State University also exists, but Samuel Walker Houston is a completely different individual who came to Huntsville and established the school for the purpose of educating, students in the minority and establishing a place where they could get an education. And I think it's very important that when we communicate that, we make the distinction and we help people understand that Samuel Walker Houston Elementary is a place that stands alone, and we need to give the gentleman that it's named after his due credit, because he's done a lot, or he did a lot for education that put us to where we are now.
That's awesome.
Well,
I think that's a great note to end on.
Well, and we thank you for the recognition. I mean, we don't do it for the recognition. We do it for the students, but it's nice to see others that recognize what we're doing. It's cliche, but the children, they are the future, right? We're in charge of setting kids up for success to go and play their role in this world. And we play a very pivotal part in that. There's educators that set me up for success to put me where I am today, and I can't thank them enough. So hopefully I'll be like that one day.
Well, thank you. And thanks for being here.
No problem, Miss Larissa. I appreciate the time. It was wonderful talking with you.
Thanks for listening to Schoolin' Around, a podcast hosted by Branching Minds. Go ahead and subscribe to our feed wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, if you are enjoying our content, would you do us a favor and rate and review our podcasts on iTunes? This helps others find our podcast and lets us know how much you love what we're creating. Branching Minds is an educational technology company using learning sciences and technology to help districts effectively personalize learning through MTSS. To learn more about us, check out our website, branchingminds.com, or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Branching Minds.